My goodness. Okay, we are excited to be here once again. I'm actually so incredibly excited for today's topic. It is one of my favorite things to talk about. And so today we're going to be talking, just because as we're recording this, we're leading into the new year. It's actually New Year's Eve right now. And I realize that this will be posted after, in a couple of weeks, but it seems really fitting that we're recording this today. So today we're talking about, like I said, one of my favorite things to talk about, which is goal setting, and just some of the things around that. But we're going to talk about establishing new habits, as I said, fitting leading into 2024, eliminating old habits, setting achievable goals, which we're going to really dive into that, and embracing your authenticity. And sorry, let me try that again. Maybe Ellie, you should do this one. Embracing your authenticity. And I like to think of that as quieting the noise. So without further ado, here we are talking about resolutions and goal setting, revolutionizing resolutions and crafting your best year yet.
Yeah.
I actually am so incredibly excited to talk about this because I love goal setting. It's one of my favorite things. Oh my gosh, it's one of my favorite things to teach, to talk about. You and I talk about goals all the time. And so I think it's so fitting. Like, I love goals so much because I think we need to teach women to set goals that empower them versus disempowering them. And so excited about today. So just as we've done in the past, we're formatting this podcast with, just by asking questions, because I think asking questions and conversations are one of the greatest ways for people to learn, and just to bring some understanding around certain topics like goal setting. So
real and authentic. You get the opportunity to kind of learn and understand the person more, and kind of more where they're coming from and why they think what they think, in a not super structured way. So yeah, it's just more authentic and more relatable.
Yes, I totally agree. Okay, so one of the things that we discussed talking about was establishing new habits. And I know that 2023 was a huge year for you. And this might go a little bit deeper than what maybe you had hoped. And just to kind of clear the air here for anyone that is choosing to listen to these podcasts, we don't actually Ella has no idea what I'm about to ask her. So I think she feels a little put on the spot right now, but
we hide, or we write we're not in the same rooms. So it's all a surprise to both of us.
So I know 2023 was a huge year for you. And I feel actually super honored to have got to witness all the things that came of that. And oh my gosh, just honestly, part of today, the like New Year's Eve, December 31st, is like I always think it's so amazing to reflect. And so, sorry, before I ask you my question, I've been reflecting so much today, and Dave and I've been talking so much about the past year and all the things that we've experienced, and all the things that we've, been honored enough to to be around, to, I guess, to have the space to view things and take from them and learn from them. And so your last year, year 2023, from my perspective, is like, wow. I don't really have words, because I think, I don't know, it just happened in the first quarter of 2023 where something just kind of clicked in you, and it's like your whole being just shifted into this kind of new, it was like the lotus flower, blooming out of the darkness. And then it's like you finally kind of came into yourself, is what I'm trying to say. So I know it was a really huge year for you. And I know that you had to let go of a lot of habits, old habits that no longer served you. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, I'd
Okay.
love to. I think it would help so many people because even though like my habits, I had addictive patterns to quite a few different things, but it's also applicable to like anyone who has any addictive patterns in any way, from say eating all the way to drug use, you know,
Mhm.
all addiction. So it's kind of like my experience can maybe umbrella and maybe it might not be the same as what someone else is going through, but it could for sure help because in my opinion, addiction is addiction.
Mm-hmm. And you're so right. Like, addictions aren't just, when we think of addictions, especially probably my generation, we think of like drugs and alcohol, but there are so many forms of addiction out there.
Oh,
So
like
many
phones,
mechanisms.
social media, like
Yeah.
if there's
Oh,
anything that you do that consumes your life in an unhealthy way is addiction.
mhm.
It
And I
could
think,
be addicted to thoughts, you could be addicted
oh
to
yeah,
something, negative thought patterns, so many different things that addiction can apply to.
totally. Okay, so let's talk about that because that, like I said, that was such a huge, I think, turning point for you. And that was like the first quarter of 2023,
I agree.
where it's like you just okay, so my perspective on it, and I want you to dive a little bit into this, but what I saw from my lens was that it was like one day you woke up and you were like, what am I doing? Like none of these things that I'm doing, um, like none of them align with who I want to be. And I guess that's the lens I took on it because I had a similar experience in my early 20s as well. And
Mhm.
so it was like I was like witnessing you do this thing that I had done 20 years ago, where I was just like, this is not who I am, and this is not how I want to be and how I want to show up in the world. So what did it take? So like you left these habits that you had had for I don't know how long, but you just kind of cut them out of your life. And so let's talk about that. You talk about that.
Okay, so I was reading a book. It was my first book I had read this year. I always was like so against reading because it's kind of forced in school and you have to read things that like, I don't know, it might be good to some people, but it didn't really, the topics, English literature did not fascinate me. And I didn't know that there were so many other types of books out there that you could read, other genres. And I just thought there was fiction and nonfiction. And I thought fiction was fairy tale stories and nonfiction was autobiographies. But then I discovered a woman, she's my mentor that I follow. She had recommended this book, and it's a super simple, like beginner friendly, getting into your leveling up era, spiritual journey, even. And it's called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And there was a part in the book, and so by the way, I used to vape all the time, and I was also smoke weed. And these substances kind of consumed my life in a way. And at first it started out fine, I was a teenager, do it with friends, but then it got to the point where to deal with difficult emotions, I would use it. And I remember I was reading this part in the book, and it was talking about how I forget exactly what specifically it was talking about, but it was something to do with leaving behind old patterns and embracing the now, that there's nothing like now, and now is eternal, but now is the moment. Like you don't have to be like, oh, but I've been doing this for so long and it's consumed my past. That doesn't exist. You can't reach out and grab it. It's not there. Now is now, so you can do whatever you want now. It was basically talking about that. And I wish I either like had the book with me, or I wish I could remember exactly what it had said, but I was like hitting my vape while reading this. And then all of a sudden I put it down and I was like, what am I doing?
Oh my God.
It was literally like a, what am I doing? I'm reading a personal development book and I'm engaging in a habit that is literally killing. What am I doing? This does not align with the woman that I want to become. This won't lead me to owning a 6-figure business one day or inspiring people. Like, this is something I'm actually ashamed of and that I hide from people. Like, nobody knew. You had known, because I had told you that it was something that I had done. But I remember the one day I just came up to you and I was like, I'm done. And yeah, I wouldn't say I was scared to make the decision before. I just didn't know if I could keep the promise to myself. And I am someone, like, I mean what I say and I say what I mean. So I never thought that I could quit my addictive patterns because I didn't know if I could keep my word to myself. And then at this point in my life, I was starting to like reconnect with myself and develop my relationship with myself more. And I realized, why would I do something to me that's harming me and not allowing me to achieve my ultimate potential? And yeah, I told myself, I'm like, I'm done. And I never did it again. And it wasn't easy, but it wasn't difficult because I knew that I could do hard things. And you don't have to like outright do what I did and completely stop your addictive patterns, but start by showing yourself you can do hard things, small things. Do you have any example? Like going to the gym, doing a difficult workout. Keep promises to yourself, do small hard things so that you can do the big hard things, because that's also what helped me so much.
It is like, they say that the best way to build confidence is to do the things that you say you're going to do, right? Like so we have to have like a motivator. So there'll be like you obviously had a motivation to stop doing what you were doing. And so when motivation is really high.
Can I say something quickly? Sorry.
Yeah.
I never planned on quitting. I never was like, okay, 10 days, this is my last vape pod ever. Like, no, one day I was just like, today's the day. What am I doing with myself? Like,
Yeah. Do you think that maybe like psychs people out? Because so I don't know. I've like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I have so many thoughts around this because I like like on the other side of it, like just to give people some like history and background, like my partner and I, like, we don't smoke, we don't drink, like we don't drink alcohol ever. We don't vape, we don't use any like numbing substances like casually. And it's
clean and full and
but it's the craziest thing to me because I think like actually don't know that many people like us that just choose, it's not for any religious reason or any, I wasn't previously an alcoholic or anything like that. It's just like, I was young, I was about Ella's age, and I remember thinking like, this doesn't align. Like 100% of what you just said is how I felt about like drinking and partying. I became a mom young, and I remember being so hungover. And you were like young, you were like a year and a half old. And I just literally wanted to lay on the couch all day. And I felt so ashamed of myself that you kept bringing me like toys or blocks or something. And I was just like dying. And I remember thinking like, this person didn't choose this. Like this little human didn't choose this life. And I'm just done. I'm just never going to drink again because it doesn't align with who I want to be in the future. And I never drank. Like in the last 20 years, I've probably had like
I can count on my one singular hand.
I know. And I'm thinking like maybe 4 or 5.
Your wedding, you had like a sip of wine that was gifted to you. Yeah.
Like a glass of wine here or there, but like less than, honestly, like I could count on one hand in the last 20 years how many times. So it's so crazy that like for me, I was like, oh my God, these things are so normalized in society. Drinking, vaping, now like cannabis is so normalized for people. like it's just so normalized. And so I was like,
I'm sorry. A big part of it was for me was my association. The people that I chose to hang out with outside of my family, which I didn't even really, once I started spending more time with you guys, was honestly when I started making these decisions. But before, a big part of it as well was my association. It was just so normalized and everyone did it. But like now I realize like what everyone does isn't working. You take a look at the world. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add that. A big part of it was my association.
I think association is huge, right? Like they say, if you hang out with 5 people that go to the gym, you'll be the 6th. If you hang out with 5 people that read books, you'll be the 6th. If you hang out with 5 people that are entrepreneurs, the likelihood is that you'll be the 6th. And if you hang out with 5 millionaires, you'll be the 6th. And so association is literally everything.
On the other side, hang out with 5 people who talk negatively about themselves, you'll also have a poor relationship with yourself. You hang out with people who eat unhealthy, you'll eat unhealthy. You hang out with people who smoke and do those types of things, you will also do those types of things. It's hard not to, because as humans, one of our basic needs for survival, there's 2, and that's to feel safe and to reproduce. And if we don't feel safe, then it feels like our world is ending. But where I'm getting to with this is being accepted, being a part of the group, that's part of feeling safe.
Oh, for sure. It's like biologically, it's like a part of survival, right? Like we needed to be accepted into the tribe so that we could survive.
Yeah.
And, obviously there are parts to that, but for other parents, like if there are any parents that like listen to this, it was the craziest thing. I just have to say this. I know, oh my gosh, this is going to go way longer because we could talk forever about this, but like I had an idea that you had some, like, we'll say unsavory habits. But it was the hardest thing to, like, it was a challenge, right? Like, we didn't have a lot of conversations about that. And it was interesting to navigate because I don't know. Yeah, it was
I'm so sorry to interrupt. There is a dog outside driving a little car.
Oh my God. You have to send me a picture. This is so crazy. Okay, I'm gonna get into the next question because we want to keep these like short enough that you guys can listen to them, quick, on a drive or whatever, but also I feel like we're gonna have a whole conversation about that because I think that it would be helpful for some people at some point. But okay, on that, what was your process around establishing new habits so that they didn't just fill a void? Do you know what I mean? So like I'm curious about your process of establishing new habits because I know that you had a couple of them and I think they were really amazing. But like how did you establish new habits when you were leaving behind old habits that you felt didn't suit who you wanted to be? Did you just say, okay, well, this is the type of person I want to be, so I'm going to do these things instead? I just wonder, like, so that you didn't say stop vaping and then start eating really poorly, or do you know what I mean? Like, so that you didn't just have one unsavory habit fill the void and take up another unsavory habit, so that you didn't stop those things and then start like just binge watching Netflix in order to, like you mentioned, you started using them, like you started vaping or like using marijuana to buffer emotions or feelings. Like, how did you move from those things to, like, you have incredible habits right now? Incredible, like habits that I'm like, man, how do I get my clients to establish these types of habits so that they can live a happy, healthy, and wholesome life and have a happy, healthy, and whole experience of themselves? Like, what was your process around that?
That's a great question. What I did was, first I had to get clear on like, who am I? What do I want? And who do I want to become? And it was creating that image of the woman that I desire to be, the woman who walks into a room and lights it up, the woman who people naturally gravitate towards and want to hear her speak, want to hear what she has to say. And I had to create who that was. Who do I want to be? And of course, you don't get to plan it down to a T, but having that idea of the direction I want to go to and like visualizing like how she dresses, how she carries herself, the things she does. Having that, I have it as like an image here. Having that image was something that I could look to in the times where I'm like, ugh, I'm having a difficult time. I just want to go back to what I know, what's safe, the habits that I had before. Because this is so unknown. And this woman that I want to be, I don't know what the process of getting to there is going to be like. So yeah, creating that image of who I wanted to be, and then also on the other side, looking into my future, but also looking into my past. What has happened to me? Why is it so difficult for me to process my own emotions? What experiences led to me being blocked off emotionally? And also like as well, the good things from my past. What did I do as a child that would light me up and bring me so much joy? What types of things just made me excited? And incorporating that into my vision of my future self. And then how I didn't go back on my word was I just stayed so dedicated to future me and past me, little baby Ella, and 35-year-old Ella who's so successful, so abundant. And I'm like the middleman. It's up to me to get me to where I need to go. So that's how I did it, honestly. And asking myself questions, is this gonna make me that Ella? Best version of me, Ella? And is this going to make little Ella so proud? That's how I incorporated all of those habits, my new habits.
That's really awesome. Oh my gosh, excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. Okay, so you and I've had lots of conversations. This isn't a question. This is just something that I want to bring up on here because I actually love this so much. When you talk about like future you and then like baby version of Ella or little version of Ella, you know, so many people have childhood trauma, and you and I've talked a lot about this, about like how trauma shapes us and how a lot of people don't, like, I think that a huge part of the problem is so many people don't acknowledge trauma, right? Like trauma can be anything. Like I think I can't remember, it might be like Gabor Mate or someone who talks about like micro traumas, like small things that say wouldn't really affect one person, but that have a profound effect on other, like someone else. And so you and I've talked about the meditation, like the doing a meditation to kind of heal or to connect with your childhood, your inner child, or the childhood version of yourself, where you actually like imagine yourself taking the hand of yourself as a child and telling yourself like it's going to be okay. Talk a little bit about that, because I love that these conversations that I have with you when we talk about that.
Okay, so yeah, do you want me to talk about the meditation, or do you want to just talk about like some of the things that I've done to
Well, both.
Okay, so I think all of us, none of us are the exception of childhood trauma. Like you said, there are certain things that just happen, and it could be an example of, say you're young and you witness someone being yelled at, and when you were little, you were confused, you didn't know what was going on, or maybe you were the one being yelled at, and your chest tightened up and your breathing shifted and you felt really weird and it was a little bit scary because you didn't know what was going on and it was unpredictable. Even though it was just someone raising their voice, maybe you had accidentally made a mistake or someone else had made a mistake, it felt really traumatic. And then I think a lot of people don't know, if you don't, energy or emotions, that tightness in the chest, I don't know what's going on. Emotions are energy. It breaks down into energy in motion. And energy, I'm going to get into a little bit of the scientifics. Energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed and transmuted. So if you're young, you probably don't know the tools to release that energy. So it's getting stored within you. And there's something then that later happens. Say you're an adult and maybe you're at work and your boss raises his voice at you, and then you shut down, the blinders come on, and then it almost brings you back to that exact state that you were in when you were a child, the first time that happened. And I think a lot of people are just like, oh, why am I like this? And then they just move on. But then that experience is almost tacked on to that childhood experience. So once you're an adult, I believe, like, you can't control what happens to you when you're a kid. And like I said, none of us are the exception of childhood trauma. We all go through it. But once you're an adult, it is your responsibility to catch when you're in those circumstances, like my example with the boss, and be like, whoa, I felt a certain way. Why did I feel that way? And what's an experience that stemmed from in my childhood? So doing a lot of those kinds of things has really, really helped me heal.
That's really deep for a lot of people, I think. Like I'm curious to know how many people have the self-awareness to actually go to that place and to say like, oh, this is how, like, I've talked with a good friend of mine and we talk about it being like thought work. So and I call it like curiosity around, what you're feeling, which I'm sure Dave thinks I've been like on like a crazy train for the last couple of years, because I'm like, oh, I actually try to dissect the emotions when I have them so much more. And I think that you do too. But I'm curious how many people do that, right? Like where something comes up. Like I remember like when I was in my 20s, you and I've talked about this a lot. Like I had a really bad eating disorder like as a teen and into my 20s. And it doesn't mean like once we're healed of those things, and I say healed, like the feelings still come up here and there, right? Like you'll never be free of triggers or of feelings or emotions, but it's what you do with them. And it's how you, like, when a feeling comes up or a thought comes up, the poetic snaps, I love it. When the thought or the feeling comes up and you're like, oh, I recognize this feeling, but like, what is it? And you sit with it for a minute and think like, okay, this actually gives me this feeling of, like you named, this gives me a feeling of tightness in my chest, or of, my heart rate is going up, or I'm feeling kind of sweaty, like whatever it is. Like it's so crazy how you can like take the power that once held by just naming the parts of it and sitting with it for a minute and being like, oh, how interesting that XYZ, like that thing triggered me back to this old feeling, which would have originally started the domino effect, or which would have, previously, not originally, but which would have previously started this domino effect of me going down this really bad path, like, relapsing in my disorder, or you vaping again, or someone, reverting to old habits. But then when you sit with the feeling and you dissect it and you kind of piece it apart and name the pieces of it, it takes it from this like heightened, like overstimulating effect to like, yeah, it's
and you have all the power, and we're all human.
thing.
We're all gonna react to things, but it's that having the awareness of your reaction. And then, you don't just one day go from, being a reactive person, getting upset at things easily, to today I'm deciding that I'm in control of myself. Like, it takes time and it takes work and it takes understanding why you are the way you are and understanding your triggers. And eventually you can get to the point where you're like, you can kind of anticipate, and not living in a state of anxiety, but you're like, oh, this person is starting to use a tone that usually makes me shut down.
Mhm.
You know, or like catching those types of things, you know?
Yeah, totally. I think that, oh my gosh, what was I going to say? Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with that.
Mhm.
Mm.
It's a
Oh,
really deep topic. We're gonna have to have a whole
right.
thing
Yeah,
just
totally. Because I'm sitting here and I'm like, I have a bazillion thoughts about literally about all of it. And yeah, I definitely think that we need to have another conversation about this. But let's carry on with, it's January 31st, and we want to talk about new habits and goals, and goal setting. So let's talk about goals. How do you feel about setting? Okay, so goals is like a big word in obviously at this time of year. And I've noticed,
overused. Yeah.
sorry, what was that?
It's so overused like this time of the year.
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay. And I even catch myself, like I've caught myself a lot over the last 12 months, because I did things a little bit differently. Like I've done things a little bit differently the last couple of years, which we can talk about, after or on another podcast. But I've caught myself like several times in the last 12 months, especially talking to my girls, the girls I coach, about goals and goal setting, and like having this like some discomfort around the word goals, because I think that like this is just for me personally, and obviously I do definitely set goals, but I think it's an overused word, and it's like hyped up to be something, because what goals really are is just creating a process, to like creating a process to hopefully achieve an outcome, right? Which is the outcome is the goal. But anyway, we're going to talk about that. And so I want to talk to you because I hear people all over social media and on podcasts talking about achievable goals. So how do you feel about when people talk about setting achievable goals? And I'm like doing the finger quotations around achievable goals. How do you make sure your goals, if we're like, when I hear achievable goals, I feel like what I hear in that is safe things that we know we can reach, and not setting, sorry, my brain's going so crazy right now. How do you make sure that your goals are reaching goals, that are going to push you to a new level, and not compensatory goals that are just covering up something that you're going to achieve because it's just a good enough thing? Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm so glad that this is the direction that this is going in, because I had the exact same thought when we wrote out achievable goals and we hadn't clarified it. But I'm so glad we're on the same page with
Okay.
it, because yes, I agree. People are like, oh, I'm gonna make achievable goals, and it is that safe option. It's almost a limiting belief of, what do I think with the current state I'm in now, what do I think I'm worthy of achieving?
Yeah.
Not having that mindset of abundance of, I
Mm-hmm.
can do whatever I want, however I want to, what does my heart desire to do, and how am I going to make a lifestyle change to carry that goal into fruition? Because I think a lot of people, they have these goals. There's the two sides of it. They have these big goals, but they're not willing to make the lifestyle changes that align with the person who has that outcome, or they make the safe option of something that they think they could achieve if in the state that they currently are. Because a lot of people, like I said before, it goes against that feeling of safety,
Mm-hmm.
feeling you're a bit in the unknown, and that's scary to people, even though you're in control of the outcome. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, they do choose the option of making safe goals where they can stay the same, they can stay the same version of themselves that they are, and still achieve something that they think they're worthy of in the current state that they're at.
Yes. Oh, I totally agree with you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I'm glad that we're on the same page about that, because that's, like I said, when I hear achievable, I think we need to set our sights on things like, what would you do if nobody told you you couldn't do it? if nobody had gone before you, like what do you actually want? Like when you talk about becoming the person, the woman that you want to become, like that's got to be lofty, right? Like if we called that and labeled that a goal, like I know you and I know where your head's at. And I would think if we called that a goal, if we called that the outcome, that'd be a big, like, it's a big reach, right? It's not this like, I want to.
This is gonna happen.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
You need to stop using the word goals and this is what I want and this is how I'm gonna make it happen. But not
No,
even, I think process is important, but not knowing every single detail, because then you're at the start and you're like, I don't even know what to do or how to do it to get there. It's like, it's a lot of it is trusting your intuition, having that image of what you want, the end goal, and then finding what works for you to get there by feeling, not by planning and having it into a T, if that makes sense.
I think that 2024 should be about like teaching women that the word goals is just like, it's just the direction, right? That's it. The goal is just the North Star. That's it. And that you have to have the North Star, but you also have to have, like, you might not know every part of the process, but the part of like having a process, if you have a process and you have the ability to like assess and evaluate and change what isn't working, right? Like assessing and evaluating your process is about looking at like at certain points in the direction of the North Star, stopping and saying, okay, is this the most efficient way of getting to where I'm going? Or what of this is not working? What can I leave behind and what can I leave behind to lighten the load? And what can I keep with me? Or what new processes are, like, processes to me is just another word for habits. What other habits can I add in that might be a better way for me to get to where I want to be, right? Like I said, the goal is nothing more than the North Star. It's the outcome. So the outcome can change. Like we see this in fitness all the time. The outcome changes, right? Like someone comes in and they're like, well, I want to lose 30 pounds. Like if I had $1 for every time someone told me they wanted to lose 30 pounds, my God. But along the way, the process often changes to, or not the process never changes, but the outcome of wanting to lose X amount of weight and be this size changes to, I actually want to be the healthiest version of myself. I actually want to do things that allow me to live happily and feel good in my skin, right? So the outcome changes, but like the name of the outcome changes. Because in the process of getting to the healthiest version of yourself, you're probably going to, have some things that will change with your physical body as well. And so, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. You're good. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's it. Like, we just need to reframe the way we think of goals instead of, like I really don't like resolutions, and I set goals, but I don't think of them probably in the same way most people think of them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with that. Is that all your questions for me today?
That is my questions. Do you want to add anything to that?
I think we've uncovered a lot of new topics within that conversation that we need to dive into.
Yeah, totally.
Yes. Oh, there was just so much there. But all of it all circled back together. And even like through the questions you're asking me and my responses and what you added to it, I'm like, oh my God, my questions also kind of pertain to this as well. So perfectly. So should I get into those?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I know that you are I wrote goal oriented, but I should have used a very process driven person, and you're a very disciplined woman. So how did you teach yourself to become process driven? And what advice can you give to destigmatize the word discipline? Because I think a lot of people think that discipline, like they think of like the military, like I have to wake up at 0900 or whatever, and I have to do 500 push-ups and like that was my image of what discipline was anyways. But I think people think of discipline as this like scary thing, but really you and me have had this conversation a lot. Discipline is the highest form of self-love. It's having control over yourself, your emotions, what you do, the outcomes you want to have in your life. So what kind of advice can you give with keeping your word to yourself? Because that's what I think of discipline as, keeping your word to yourself.
Okay, sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Oh, how did you teach yourself to become more process driven?
I actually have to attribute a lot of that to like back when I competed. I think I've always been like a process driven person, and I've always been like very self-motivated. Like I think I came out of the womb self-motivated and like a good self-starter, but it was probably literally like born into my DNA from my dad, to be honest, because I view my dad as being someone who has always like had a lot of ideas and has been like a self-starter. And I think he's taught like my brothers and I that, but so a lot of that, like it really came into play for me, like in my early 20s when I was competing in like fitness competitions, because in order to do that, and now I just want to say like, so when I think back over my journey, like that played a huge part in me learning how to practice the steps to get to an outcome. Right. And so really what it is, like the achievement of like being process driven, having a really big goal or a really big outcome, it really boils down to just like obviously breaking it down, but having the ability to practice the steps over and over. And I think that we don't give enough credit to that. Like people don't credit the practice part. Like they just think that they should have a goal and they should achieve it. And I don't believe that at all. I believe that every single thing that we, sorry, go ahead.
I think like it should be perfect, no failures, no mistakes. But those are where you like, those are what you learn from to get to your goal.
Oh my gosh. And so like, I was going to say like, you know, in the process of getting on stage, I think I competed, oh my gosh, 35 times in my career. In those 35 times, like, my God, the first probably 27 times I did it the most inefficient way, and I literally drug myself through the mud, and then but realized somewhere along the way, and this like Ella, I tell you all the time, everything we do in life, whether it's business, whether it's relationships, whether it's achieving a fitness goal, whether it's it doesn't matter what it is, starting anything new, everything is a blueprint for everything else. And so if we start to look at life that way, like for me, competing was a blueprint for literally everything else I did in my life. It was the perfect blueprint for starting a business, and the perfect blueprint for, to be honest, like having a family, because you just take the blueprint and you overlay it. Obviously, you change components of it, but it took me a long time. Like it probably took me 6 or 7 years to learn that everything didn't have to be hard. But what I gained in that time was like I had a lot of practice, right? Like I practiced the steps of, you know, like I said, at that time for me, it was competing, but I practiced those steps over and over and over again and got really good at them. And really, like the other thing that I want to say is that people talk about discipline and they think, yes, that it's this militant thing that like I actually just had someone say to me really recently, like, oh, you're so disciplined. It was early in January. You're so disciplined. It was in my training studio during a session. You probably don't eat any junk at Christmas time. And I'm like, you know what? There's this like misconception to discipline, that discipline is the thing. Like discipline is this grinding hard thing that we have to like fight every single day to like, it's like we're in a battle of discipline going to war against ourselves. But actually discipline is just habits, and habits just come from practice. That's it. So when someone is really good, like I said, like my lens that I live in is in training and nutrition, right? Like it's what I do every day. It's obviously I've been so fortunate to build a business out of something that I love so much and have so much passion for. But it's just creating like habits. Discipline comes from habits. And so if we want to get good at, like if we want the freedom, say in our nutrition, if we want freedom with our nutrition, yeah, go ahead.
Completing habits, because you can have habits. I think lots of people are like, oh, this is my habit, but they do it like once a month, twice a week, or they start something but they don't entirely finish it. It's like completing those habits that builds
Yes.
self-discipline, shows yourself that you can do hard things, which is the highest form of self-love. It builds confidence, which confidence is self-love.
Yes, confidence comes from executing habits, the habits that you say align with your values and align with the things or the person that you want to show up as, or the who you want to be, or how, you know what I'm saying? Like it's, you know, these things, like we have these ideas of what these words mean: goals, habits, discipline, process, but actually like they're all interdependent on one another. And like I was saying, like if somebody wants to have a lot of flexibility in their nutrition, they need to develop a habit of probably tracking their nutrition. And the habit is what's going to teach them, right? There's a lot of, there's a process of learning that comes in the development of a habit, right? And so I guess when it comes to something like that, say, or like with nutrition, with exercise, with our mindset, I think people just think that they should decide they want to do these things and then be good at them. And they don't want to put the practice in, right? The daily practice. But I think if most people looked at any one of those things, at mastering their mindset, at mastering their nutrition, at mastering their experience of themselves, mastering their emotions,
everything. Yeah.
literally everything. If they looked at it as as you know, the same way they would look at, like the example I use all the time in my studio is, if you wanted to become a concert pianist, you wouldn't show up to a music lesson having never played a piano and expect to be good at it in 1 week, right? You'd still suck. It's the process of practicing the piano every single day for weeks upon weeks upon weeks upon months upon years that is going to get you to be the best at it. And that's the same as, like I said, like mastering your emotions, working on your mindset, becoming more mindful, having a better relationship with yourself, understanding nutrition. Like just because we eat every day, it doesn't mean that we have an understanding of the fuel, like the things that fuel our body, because nutrition is just a tool.
I think also too, people look at it like there's the beginning point. I'm at where I'm at now, this terrible low place, and this is where I want to be, up here, this amazing place. And don't, they just expect to get there. Like, I think we've already kind of covered this bit, but you don't realize that there's growth in there that gets you to that place. And you learn little things about yourself, and you like evolve the way you think a little bit, and then you do it a little bit more, and then you maybe practice a new habit, and then eventually you do get there. But it's not this like step-by-step process that you're gonna know how to do everything when you're down here. You learn it as you go. You learn through the growth how to get to where you want to go.
And it is like, you know, it's consistency compounding over time. It's like the compound effect. It's doing the thing. Like everybody wants something really shiny. Like everybody wants like a shiny book to read on mindset, or they want a shiny new habit that they're going to implement. But actually it's like it's most
good apps thing, or
it's so true. It's the most like, it's the most boring things compounded. Like it's getting good at the most boring basic things. You have to get good at the basics, at the most basic things, before you can do the big shiny things. And to be honest, the big shiny things, I'm using finger quotes on big shiny, they're not big shiny things at all. Like the big shiny thing is the outcome, right? The outcome comes from consistency compounded over time on the most basic things. So
if you
it,
listen to a lot of the people who have these huge successes, these large companies, they always say, and so many people are like, oh, that's so superficial, and like roll their eyes. I know I used to, but they say the best part, it wasn't becoming the billionaire. It wasn't becoming the world-renowned author or artist or any of that. It was everything that came to get there that made it so fun.
oh my gosh, yes, there's a quote that, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, a lot of people discover, like, if you aren't discovering who you are in that process either, you get to this place and it's that you're like, I have everything I want, but why is it not what I want? It's enjoying the growth as you get there, learning about who you are as you're going there. That makes it so fulfilling and accomplishing. And I think people think too, they expect this end point, but they don't realize you're growing until the day you die. You're gonna achieve your goal, then you have to make a new goal to achieve. Like,
Oh my God, that's
there
that's
is
such a
no
beautiful.
end point. Death is the end point,
Yeah, that's the only thing for certain, right? That we have all this time in between. There's a great, great quote, and I don't know who originally said it, but it is like, I know that you and I've talked about it a lot, and it's, a man should not wish to become a millionaire for who he'll be once he's a millionaire, but for who he becomes along the way. And that is everything. It's like, it's the process of becoming successful. Actually, I love this time of year so much. I love getting emails from like from my athletes and from the girls that I work with, and the women that I work with, because this time of year is funny, and this shows me that we need to do so much more work on mindset. I get these emails that say like, I'm trying to, like, I haven't eaten the way I wanted to eat, or haven't done the things I've wanted to do. I haven't exercised as much as I wanted to exercise on my holidays, like over Christmas. But like, I'm going to be better. And this idea of like, they had this expectation before the holidays started, right? They had an expectation of where they would be at the end of the holidays. But they didn't have the process, or didn't have the habits to follow, or to get themselves through this time. They just literally did what they did last year, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before. And this is like people in general. They do the thing that they've always done, but they want a different result. And it's like, well, the way I see it, and the reason I love this time of year so much, is because when people actually adopt this kind of principle and this habit of like curiosity around things, like, oh yeah, this is the what I said I wanted to happen over the holidays. This is the expectation I had of myself. I had an expectation that I would just, eat whatever over Christmas and I'd get right back to it. And I didn't follow through on that expectation. So now my confidence is a little bit rattled, and my world's wobbling because I don't feel great in my skin. But if people just sat with it and said like, okay, what could I learn here? Like, like I think that the greatest opportunities we have for growth and development and learning and excelling come from this expectation, and us not fulfilling it. And so now I didn't fulfill the expectation I had of myself. So how can I grow from that? And what can I do to make sure that I'm better the next time? Because there's never not going to be, until you're dead, you named it, Ella. The only thing for certain is that we're going to die. So if I live another 50 years on this planet, that means I'm going to have another 50 Christmases, and I'm going to have another 50 birthdays, and I'm going to have, probably 100 plus vacations. So at the end of each of those, to be like, well, it didn't meet the expectation I had of myself. Like, just learn from it, people. Just look at like, how can I learn from this?
Also, too, like, you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Part of there's a bounce back period, and shortening that period where you're allowed to not eat the healthiest, but don't do that for the rest of your life, or don't be like, oh, it's too far gone, I'm just never gonna eat healthy again. Like you said, have that awareness. Oh, I'm not doing what I want to be doing. I have this goal. And then just getting back and submitting your processes back into getting to where you want to go. You don't have to, you're going to have off days. And as women, we're cyclical beings. We're the different phases of our periods and even just our hormones. It's different at different weeks of the month. So one week you are going to feel terrible, but you have those processes or you have those habits that allow you to get back to the goal. And yeah, I think also too, being hard on yourself and having expectations, you're bound to feel like you fail,
But I think
because
like if people just did the thought work around it and and said, every year Christmas vacation comes around and every year I set this, expectation of myself that I'm gonna, stay completely on track and I'm gonna eat mostly vegetables and I'm not gonna have XYZ or whatever it is. Like I think
you should
people just
enjoy it.
totally, if people just actually went into it saying, you know what? It's Christmas holidays. One week isn't going to make or break me. I know that this is what I enjoy with my family, so I'm going to enjoy that. Like, I guess that's like part of what I'm getting to with like doing the mindset work around those things is if you know that's what you're going to do and that's what you've done every year for the last 10 years, then to be like, but next year is going to be different. It's like, well, we could just call it what it is and say, you know what? Over the holidays, I'm going to enjoy myself, but I'm not going to let that stretch out into January and then February and then March and then be like, oh my gosh, so disappointed with where I'm at, right? Like it's just, you're right, we are just human. And I think that's a part of the like leveling up for women in in their experience of themselves and their relationship with themselves is like having a high standard but also having self-compassion and saying like, yeah, you know what, I don't need to be perfect. I'm going to do the best I can with what I've got. And you know what, at the end of it, I'm not going to be disappointed because ultimately the choices I make are the choices I make. And like we choose what we choose, right? So to make choices and then to feel disappointed is like, to me, it's such a waste of energy.
Yeah.
To be like, you know what, I'm just gonna eat all the food. And then after eating all the food to be like, but I'm so disappointed in myself and now I'm going to kill myself with cardio and I'm going to try to over exercise to undo what's been done. It's like, well, but you actually just made those choices, so just own them and who cares? Like it's the infinite game, as I tell people, like you're going to be here in 6 months from now and 6 months from that and 6 months from that. So in the infinite game, let's close the gap on where we're at and the expectation we have of ourselves. Let's just kind of narrow the gap and say, you know what, I'm going to eat whatever I want and I'm not going to exercise for this amount of time. And that's just the way it's going to be.
And I think for a lot of people too, that expectation doesn't come from them. It comes from something else.
Oh,
It maybe comes from the fear of like societal pressures of, oh, I feel like I need to eat this way because I have to be this certain size to be perceived as worthy enough. Example, but yeah.
I know. I feel like we can really go on and on. This is getting really far away from goals and habits. Well, it's not too far.
But also it goes with it at the same time. Well, okay, so that was my first question. Hey,
Gosh, I'm so sorry.
it's okay. There's only three. We'll try to maybe limit it down a little bit, but I'll get
Okay.
into the second one now. So what have been some habits in your past or that maybe you currently have now that you plan on leaving behind, or even habits that you've already left behind? And how has your life changed by giving up certain things to elevate you to that highest consciousness? Or what things do you want to give up to help you elevate to that highest consciousness level?
I think one of the like one of the habits that I think that I have to try, and this is like definitely a habit for me, is um is having like, oh my gosh, just improve. Like I'm on a constant quest to improve my relationship with myself. And so okay. Um I think, you know, some of the habits I've had, like I previously was really, really hard on myself, is I think, you know, it's probably why I relate to women, you know, and where they're at is um a lot of women have the habit of having these really, really high expectations of how they should show up, how they should be, like who they should be, what they should want, all of these things. And I don't know, I think part of that is a habit that we form.
And then almost it's like once you let those things go, you do become the person you want to become.
No,
You do,
it's
you
actually,
know.
it's so, so true. Um, I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, I have no bad habits, but I have like for 20 years have worked on, you know, of course there are always like small things that I want to change, but um I think that I don't know, yeah, I kind of went on a bit of a conquest of like, you know, exploring myself and my habits and my thoughts and my perceptions and all of these things, like over the last, really like deeply, I would say over the last probably 5 years. And so, you know, I'm actually so pumped going into 2024 is probably one of the first times in my life. Last year was really amazing too, but like I would say prior to last year, like it's been like a slow process kind of ongoing, but going into 2023 was the first year that I was like really intentional about not playing life on defense and about like playing life on offense, and like really setting intentions, like not setting goals for the year and not setting intentions like the
Hold on,
way.
I just want to say, repeat that, or I'll repeat it. Playing life on offense instead of defense.
Mm.
That's so
Yeah,
profound.
it's
A lot
like
of us
last
are
year.
living in that defensive state where we feel we need to protect ourselves, and that comes from, again, full circle moment, having wounds from your
Yeah.
past.
Yes. Yeah. Um, yeah, like that. So anyway, I don't feel like I have, like, of course I have things that, small things that I work on all the time, but I don't know. Yeah. Just life, like I find my life is way more intentional now than previously. And like what I did last year is I got a calendar. Like I'll share this on here because you kind of know, because you obviously were a part of it because you live with me, but like last year I got this calendar, and on there, like it was like the last 2 weeks of the year I spent like going through this calendar for 2023. And like I decided that, yeah, like that I wasn't going to play life on defense, I was going to play life on offense. And so I put in like weekly dates with Dave, so that we could have like a huddle time, so that we could, like, you know, make a game plays throughout the year, and every week we would sit down and say like, okay, like what's working here, what isn't working. And it was just like a really good time for us to reconnect. And to be honest, I think that our relationship really, like, we've been together, oh my gosh, I don't even know how long, but like we've lived a whole life together basically. And like 2023, what I think is the year that our relationship like really like rooted and took off, right? Because we knew where each other were at all the time. And so anyway, I put weekly dates with Dave. We had a monthly family meeting, which kind of fell apart a little bit. But I had like something that, so, you know, there's a gentleman that I love on social media, and he talks about having a misogi, which is like one big year defining thing. And so last year, I didn't just say like, well, I want to run a 10K or whatever. I literally put it on my calendar. Like in December, I put on my calendar that Eddie and I were going to run the Banff Marathon in June. And we did that. Like, so all the things that I put onto my calendar, because I had, again, like I said, decided to play life on offense instead of defense, instead of like, waiting until Dave and I were ready to like really at each other's throats to like try to connect with each other. Like we just intentionally did that all year. And I don't know, that was huge. And so I know that's not really answering the question about what habits do I want to leave behind. But at this point, like, I don't know, I take care of my mental health. I take care of my physical health. I really pour into my relationships. I say no to the things that don't align with me. Like we live life through the lens of our values, which, I think that's a big part of it. When you live that way, you don't have very many things that you're like, well, I got to leave this behind, because, one of our values, like we value, like health and vitality. And so if it doesn't pass through that lens, like we value connection, we value, all these things, like we have all of these kind of like keywords that we live through. And if they don't pass through that lens, then we don't do them. And so that's an easy way to sift habits.
That was really good. Thank you for that response. Okay, let's get into the third and final question. So I don't know if you know this, but only 9% of people, this is like Americans specifically, who make New Year's resolutions actually keep them like the whole year. 9%, less than 10%, and 23% quit at the end of the first week.
Oh.
And 43% quit by the end of the month, by the end of January. And I think this is because a lot of people, they're making like small term habits or have like these ideas as resolutions, but they're not making like upgraded lifestyle changes to maintain what they want to accomplish. And I know with the industry that you're in, that you work in, you witness this firsthand. Like you know that this is true. You've experienced this personally. Why do you personally believe that this happens to people? And what advice would you give to someone for creating goals to have an upgraded lifestyle, to make that upgraded lifestyle change and not just a short-term habit?
I think that this happens, to be honest, because I think a lot of people, they create compensatory resolutions, right? Like as in December, like it's so crazy to me because people's lives really like, this is just kind of a blanket statement, but in a lot of ways, people's lives fall apart in December, right? Like it's where we live anyway. It's really cold. It's really dark. There's usually a lot of snow. People are spending more. They're staying up later. They're
your skin's dry,
your gosh, like everything, right? Like lips and but all like, so I say like people fall apart in December. They don't because of all of these kind of external things going on. Like I said, like they stay up later, they eat differently, they have all these Christmas parties and friend gatherings, and if someone celebrates American Thanksgiving or like whatever, they just have all these things that create discomfort for them. So their finances maybe feel a little bit uncomfortable. So then the end of December rolls around after people have just way overindulged, like nutritionally, financially, like in every way possible. And then we're saying, okay, well, we're turning the calendar over to a new year. And so what do you want to change? I don't think people have like, number one, like just from like, like what's actually going on in people, like within people's systems, like they probably don't have the mechanisms online, like their prefrontal cortex is not online to actually make and follow through with good decisions. So they make these like compensation goals, right? Like they feel poorly about themselves, so they're like, I'm going to go to the gym every single day. I'm going to do this. Or they've maybe had, like, I think it's pretty common, there's, you know, some falling out over Christmas. Like there's almost always some kind of family fight, some family feud that you hear about. So then people are like, well, I'm going to do this in the new year. And I think that people don't make goals or don't make, we'll say, resolutions based on like I was saying, like through the lens of their values and how they actually want to live and who they want to show up as. They make them as this like band-aid to cover what feels uncomfortable for them right now. And so I think that, yeah, I think that's a really big part of the reason people, you know, struggle. And I think that for women, and so because I coach women, what I can say is, like, you know, people, when they're vulnerable and they're in these like overindulgent, like lack of sleep, not feeling great about themselves states, they set goals that really disempower them and not goals that empower them. And so I think that's why people don't follow through on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that if we actually, like I said, if we spread the word and we started to normalize women creating really empowering goals, like I think of, like I always say, through my lens, you know, based on the people I see. And I have a phenomenal clientele. Like I'm so grateful every day. I, like, you know, I, part of my gratitude practice, I practice gratitude for, you know, being in the position that I'm in, and having the, being surrounded by the women that I'm surrounded by, and having the opportunity to not only to like teach them, but also to learn from them. If we shared more on how to create empowering, like to set empowering goals or to create empowering resolutions, things that empowered us, right? Like not like, I need to lose this amount of weight so that I feel better about myself. Like that's so disempowering. Whereas like if we set a goal to, you know what, I'm gonna do the things that align with me living a healthier and happier life. I'm gonna start saying no to things that don't align with the way I want to live or the way I want to show up. I think that we would have a very different experience of it. But I don't know, I'd be curious. I should look up where setting New Year's resolutions comes from, because I've never very much bought into, I shouldn't even say I've never very much bought into it. I've always like really disliked New Year's resolutions for a lot of those reasons.
I
Because I'm
find
like,
you need certain, like, I'm gonna call them like reference points throughout the year. I think most people who are looking for like January, their fresh start, they actually start their goals and they start doing what they want to do in December so that they can establish the habit to maintain it throughout the year. And then they choose, like for me, I know for you, your birthday, that's like a
oh, yeah.
reference where you're like, okay, 6 months in, or however long it is, or it could be, it doesn't have to be your birthday, it could be like 6 months in, you are like, what am I doing that's working? What's not working? Like, I think people think they have to wait to New Year's to do these things, but you can create goals at any point in the year. You can, there's nothing making you be the way you are. It's all a choice. You can wake up
So
tomorrow and decide you want a completely different life and start taking the steps towards that. It doesn't have to be New Year's. Just coincidentally, today, tomorrow is New Year's.
yeah, that's actually like one habit and one practice that I've had for a really, really long time is and I like, people that come to my studio probably, or people close to me know this about me, but like on my birthday, I take time by myself just to reflect on, you know, am I doing the things that I said I was going to do? Am I showing up in a way that makes me proud? Am I setting the right example for the people I love the most? And like the one question, like I've told you this, and I really hope that you take this into your life, and I hope that you teach this to your kids, is like, on my birthday, I ask myself, if social media wasn't a thing, if I couldn't if I didn't have the convenience of going onto Instagram or onto whatever, or seeing what was trending right now, how would I act? What would I be doing? Like it really sparks my creative process, because I think sometimes we look for motivation in we say that we're looking for motivation from other people. We follow people. I think it's really common. What's that?
More validation than motivation.
I heard someone say one time that if we're scrolling for motivation, but we're not taking action, then it's nothing more than entertainment. So where people talk about like how they're motivated, they look at these things to get motivated. It's like, well, if you're not doing something to change where you're at and to move yourself, to move the needle at least 1%, then all you're doing is really like, it's just cheap entertainment. And I actually love that so much. It is so true. But that is like one thing that it's like such a non-negotiable for me, that I do that on my birthday. And so, yeah, it's approximately 6 months from New Year's. So I have these like two kind of anchor points during the year that I literally sit down and not just like a quick, like, is it working? Is it working? Like, no, like I like take time to sit quiet with myself. That's just like a really big part of my process and like how I function well. And yeah, I think people should do that. Like, you shouldn't wait for the new year. Like Ella said, you shouldn't rely on New Year's resolutions to get you the result, because and again, like, I so hope a couple of my friends listen to this, because I remember having this like really specific conversation with someone I love so much. I said, it was like last year, I said to her, like, what are your goals for 2023? And she told me, it was like, I want to lose X amount of weight. And I remember saying to her, like, that's exactly what you told me last year. So what are you going to do about it? Like, what are you going to do differently so that you actually achieve that this year? And so when 2024 rolls around and I say, hey, what do you hope to achieve this year? You don't tell me I want to lose the same 10, 20 pounds that I wanted to lose in 2021 and 2022 and 2023 and 2024. Like, and so it's really interesting. Like, you can set an intention of something, but you have to have a process. And people must know by this point that if you do exactly what you did last year in January, that come next January, you're going to be telling yourself, like, you're going to be setting the same goal and same resolution over again.
It's living your life on repeat. If what you did last year didn't work for you, why is it going to work for you this year?
I think that's the value of having that like anchor point. Like I said, just by coincidence, it's my birthday, right? Like on my birthday, I thank myself for another amazing year getting to know myself, right? And last year was no exception. Like, I think 2023, I learned more about myself, which we have to probably get into a whole different podcast on this, but I learned more about myself in that year, because every obstacle that came up, instead of looking at what the obstacle was and what things contributed to it, I pretended I had this big ass mirror in front of me, and I was like, how did you contribute to this obstacle, and what are you going to do different to make sure this doesn't happen again? Or things that went great, right? Like, what was your contribution to this? And I think this is like, again, totally for whole nother podcast, but like it really changed my relationship, not only with myself, it changed my relationship like with you guys, like with my own kids, but it really changed my relationship with Dave, because instead of always being like, Dave's driving me crazy, like Dave did this, Dave did that, I was like, okay, well, Dave's showing up the way Dave's going to show up, but like, what am I doing that is contributing to this thing that I find troublesome, or this thing that this feels like an obstacle right now? Like, what part do I play in this? And yeah.
Looking at what triggers you, often the reason why it like stinges a nerve is because subconsciously it's something you do yourself that you don't like, that you want to change. I've had this with so many people as well. I'm like, the way this person acts irks me. Like just something about it that really, but then I realized, oh my God, it's because I do that and I don't like it, or I used to do that and
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
embarrassed of that I used to,
Like
it,
for real, our perceptions of people and like things and events and like triggers they're like, if we let them be, they're so exposing, right? As in they expose us to ourselves. And I think that's where that like a bit of curiosity comes in. Like when you start to dissect feelings, it's like, man, 2023, I literally got fully exposed to myself so many times where I was like, this thing's really bothering me, but actually that's really all about me and this thing that I don't, particularly maybe enjoy about myself or whatever. And I think that, yeah, that was like a catalyst for like, it's such a great catalyst for growth, right? To be like, okay, well, what is my part here?
And that's so profound too. I think a lot of people, I know I used to be this way. I'd be like, this triggers me. This person should not do this. This person should not act this way. The world needs to change. But really, when I looked at it, like, what about what this person has done says something about me that I don't know about myself, something that's unhealed
Mm-hmm.
that I can work on, viewing your triggers as an opportunity for growth instead of, ugh, I'm just not going to hang around that person, or, ugh, I don't like you, you shouldn't act that way.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to change something externally rather than, like you said, looking in the mirror and, this is
Oh man.
something.
And it totally like those are the things I think that change our experience of ourselves. And those are the things that build confidence in ourselves, right? Like instead of being like, well, this person does this and that bothers me, it's like, no, like it actually, like I said, it's such a great catalyst for growth and for just I think just like self-discovery, right? Like I had a word last year and it was like I journaled it every single day I wrote in my journal. Like kind of like what I was looking for in the year. And the word that I wrote every day was like self-mastery. And obviously self-mastery is like more than just a year long. And so, but yeah, those kind of experiences, they really like open us up to like changing our experience of ourselves or even exploring our experiences of ourselves. And so I think it's really amazing.
I think too,
And sorry, go ahead.
this is just a personal opinion, but it also kind of reflects like where we're at as a society with things such as cancel culture. People
Mm.
be like, you did a bad thing, you're terrible, you're shunned. But
No, and
really,
like
you don't, it says more about you if you're telling someone that they're
almost. Yeah, I really, really dislike cancel culture. And that's like a topic for another day. But for that reason, it's like, okay, well, let's just make sure that everybody knows that you can never make a mistake, that you have to be perfect. And I think that's like part of the problem with social media right now is like, yeah, everyone's afraid to say anything because they're afraid to be canceled. And it's like, I don't know, it makes me kind of sad that the world is this way because I think that, like I said, like every obstacle that I've had and every kind of maybe mishap that I shouldn't call them mishaps, but like things that haven't gone exactly the way I've wanted have been the greatest opportunity to change in a really positive way. And yeah, we'll leave right away, Jack. And I think that like because people are so afraid of cancel culture right now, like and have been over the last few years, like I don't know, like people aren't growing in the way that they could. And yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we can talk about that another time, but I think that we're like way long on this one.
We got into some really good conversations though, and I'm glad that we talked about all the things we did. Um, Whoever finished this, we are so grateful for you. We are so grateful that you listened all the way through and used your precious time from your day to invest in yourself and learn and maybe hear a new perspective on things, or have, yeah, a new perspective that you've never thought of before that you can take into the new year to apply to creating your goals and to just living a life of abundance and a life that you want to live.
Exactly. Life on your terms, right? Living life on your terms. Yeah. Anyway, I thank you so much. I loved your questions. I actually love this conversation so much, and I feel like we could have honestly gone
Into it.
way more into different things, but yeah, super grateful for everyone. So grateful for you, Ella. Honestly, I learned so much by listening to you, and yeah, I just know that we're going to have so many great conversations in the future.
I'm so excited.
Me too.
Me too. Okay, goodbye. Love you.
Bye.